it's been since the early 90s that I met you. And
Yeah.
you guys had already been going for years by then.
Yeah, we started in 85, the end of 85, with Christoph Heidelberger, which was an engineer that I had worked with at Soundcraft, and then with Bruce Jackson. And so it was the three of us. And we didn't really think it through as many entrepreneurs do. They just see a problem, they figure out, oh, well, we could fix that problem without like a proper business plan or anything. So, but because it was near and dear to us, because CDs had just come out and people were just so unhappy with the way they sounded. And Christoph had been working on some other things, and he goes, look, I have a feeling I know exactly what the problem is. It's this anti-aliasing, anti-imaging filter is one of the big culprits in this. And he said, and so then Bruce got into it, and then the two of them started digging around, and they started designing the 944 filters, which were the first products that we ever made, which was kind of a little crazy because they were filters, and what they were already in the digital multitracks. So so to use them, we had to go in and desolder what was in there and solder ours in, which of course voided everybody's warranty. But once people started hearing them, then artists wouldn't work without them. So they were then the studios had to enhance their machines, but it wasn't cheap either. It was like $5,000 or $6,000 for a 3324, and the Mitsubishi and the DTR 900. They were like 32 channels, so they had 64 filters, so they were like $7,000. Then you had to pay the guy from the village. We had one guy that would do the soldering and desoldering. So that's how it kind of started, and it was just there was a problem, and a big glaring problem, and Christoph had an idea, and then he worked with Bruce, and we worked with, Bernie Grunman was great, and Bob Ludwig, all these great mastering engineers. They were terrific because they let us dig into their machines and see what was going on. So it was quite unbelievable. Back then, it was like the Wild West a little bit, and the techno guys, the guys that were really into technology, if you had something, they were willing to experiment. There was lots of testing and lots of Doug Sachs, all kinds of people. We did so many different listening tests, and so that's how we started, was with the filters, and then we made them in Switzerland actually, and then because Christoph was Swiss, and he eventually went back to Switzerland, so he would do the manufacturing over there and then send them to us, and we would pot them, which was funny. We had an English chap, Potter Patterson, who would pot them in a epoxy glue so that and they were pin for pin, like I said, compatible. So, you could take out the old Socian filters, which were in the Sony, and then there were Murata Erie were in the Mitsubishi, and the other machines, So we did a lot of desoldering and soldering, but people were really happy, and that's how we started our reputation. And so we kind of built it. And then after that, it was like, okay, there's a problem with jitter. And so then we tackled that problem with the low jitter clock. And then there was a problem, the DC power supplies weren't good. So we did that. And then Sony finally came over from Japan and asked us to design the front end, the complete front end of their next multitrack. And we said no, because we didn't want to just be a
Sony.
Yeah, well, we didn't want to be just an OEM firm, because by then we were selling the components to Mitsubishi, Atari, and Sony, so they could put them in at the factory. So that was good business in a way, because they just kept ordering. But we didn't really want to be a parts company, so we decided to do the first converters, the first. And so at the beginning, it was just digital multitracks, because that's still how people were recording. And then along comes Pro Tools or Sound Tools or Sound Design. What was the first one called?
Sound Tools, and then it was
Tools.
Pro Tools after.
Yeah.
And it was Pro 2 or something. They had a 20-bit converter finally that sounded a little bit better for a 2-channel.
Yeah, but it went
Pro
from
Tools was terrible.
multitrack to disc-based systems pretty rapidly.
Right.
And then all those people that spent, including Bob, who spent like $250,000 on a digital multitrack, they became big paperweights really fast.
They did.
Because, but you had a lot of experience with the early days of DigiDesign.
Yeah. Well, when I left DigiDesign to start this company, and I think the common theme is we both had to be a little crazy.
Yeah.
With a
yeah.
crazy idea. I had no business plan. I just knew what I didn't want to do anymore.
Right.
And I saw an opportunity and it just kept building and building. I remember getting that first converter in from you guys, and we had a way to show Pro Tools that sounded great because everybody said, oh, this is great, but it doesn't sound good.
Right.
It's a great idea, but we can't use it because it doesn't sound good. I'd like tape better. And I was like, tape? We're heading forward, not backwards.
Yeah, past that, yeah.
And but that converter was able to show somebody, at least with a couple of channels at a time, that you could capture sound. It sounded like a completely different experience than what the factory stock converters were.
Well, actually, DigiDesign, which was Peter Gocher and Evan, you remember them at the time, they actually asked us to make the converters for DigiDesign. Mm-hmm. So we said, okay, we'll make a really nice one for you, so we made the 88,000, and that had the Pro Tools interface to it. So that's why we always had that interface, is because we just developed that with them, with Mike Rockwell, who's now at Apple. You know, so
I talk to him pretty regularly.
Do you really?
Yeah, I still stay in touch. So the first time I met you and David Kim,
right?
You came over to visit us, and I don't know how I convinced you to do it. Like me and two guys, I had just kicked the cat out from our offices because the cat came with me.
The office.
Long story, yeah. The cat's got to go. We're going to be professionals. And I convinced you and David to come over and say, yeah. And you just put him in charge of like the channel, which before there was even really a channel term, but he's dealer sales. And you guys brought over the 81,000. Mm-hmm. And that was that first chance that like you can make Pro Tools record at like a whole other level than those other.
There was a lot in that 81,000.
It was amazing.
It was. We had soft limit in there, which allowed you to get a couple more dB by catching those transients and rounding them off, so you could get a couple more dB on there, and it also made it sound warmer. So it made it sound more like analog.
It did sound
so
more like analog.
People loved soft limit, and they still do. We have a little plug-in now for $10. It's for the soft limit. It sells every day. I look at the report, and it's like soft limit is really just selling. I don't know who's buying it because there's so many people that have bought it, but.
It's crazy.
Then it had UV22 in it, which was a dither algorithm, because the 81,000 was 20 bits, and of course CDs are 16 bits. So instead of truncating the last 4 bits off, this was a dither algorithm so that you could capture those bits and get them onto so your resolution was longer, higher, and better. So. That was years in development, and so many people licensed that from us. Yamaha, it seemed like who else? There's like 10 or different companies that licensed UV22 from us, including Apple, which was nice. And then there was the low jitter clock, and then jitter became a problem. As we sorted out one problem, another one would surface as the next biggest thing. Yeah. And then jitter was a real problem.
So Big Ben came along, right?
Yeah, and then Big Ben came along. We made the clock, and people loved Big Ben. I'm thinking about making another one kind of, because people still miss that. Yeah. But we've put the Big Ben clock in all the Symphony stuff so that it has that low jitter clock inside it. But they still like a separate clock box, so maybe one day we'll get to it.
Yeah, for multi-system applications like we use here, if you have 3 Pro Tools systems, they all need to be talking like exactly in sync. The only way to do that is one central clock. There's ways to do it without a central clock, but they're all a little bit kludgy. It's much easier to distribute one standardized
One
clock.
standard, yeah. Yeah, well, what happens in technology is the parts go obsolete sometimes, and so then you need to redesign completely, but you're in the middle of 3 other projects, and so it gets pushed to the back, and then it's like, again, it's a lot of the products that we make are more out of love for the industry than they are, this is going to sell 1 million pieces, you know, and the clock was one of those. There's only a certain very slim percentage of people that would want a Big Ben.
Yeah, we did well with it because those were our clients, but a music store wouldn't really have the application for it unless they just wanted more lights in the rack, which, it's a viable market.
Yeah, for sure.
That's cool. tell me about some of the other milestones, because one of the main things I wanted to get to were what were the milestones over the last decades.
Yeah.
And it sounds like 88,000 was probably
That was
big
another one because that had the ability to format convert and had as input TDIF, SDIF, ADAT, SPDIF, AES. I mean, I think there was like 8 different formats that you could utilize depending on which ones you decided what cards you decided. But then you could format convert between any of them, which was just the best thing for major studios because people would come in. There was a while when ADAT machines were just the most popular thing, and then
and
how do you?
timeline dubbers came up.
Yeah.
And then the Tascam dubbers right
Yeah.
after
Then
that.
the TDIS stuff came out. Yeah. So yeah, we even had it for the SSL. We had SDIF and Pro Tools, of course, which was the major one.
Right. Having that Pro Tools link on the back direct.
Yeah.
Made a lot of other manufacturers very
jealous.
upset.
I bet.
Yeah,
I know.
I get calls. Why do they get that? I'm like, I don't know.
Because we helped with Mike Rockwell design it, because Peter and Evan had asked us to make that converter for them. Actually, they wanted us to make both the high end and the 888, but we just too small, so we decided to. And plus, Christoph and Bruce, they just wanted to do high end stuff. They didn't want to make things cheap. Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's a different mindset.
Different mindset.
You're trying to make the best of the best, or hey, this will work. And
right.
This will work is not a philosophy.
Yeah. Then there was the Ensemble. That was a great product, and we did a lot of work with Apple on FireWire drivers. Remember FireWire?
Of course. Yeah. Of course.
Because at the time that we started working with them, I think the FireWire driver had 13 milliseconds latency, which was just unacceptable. So we actually worked with them and a couple of engineers that I actually hired to work with them, but they helped me on locating. Well, I located them. They helped me pay for them, but they needed additional assistance to get that driver the latency down. So we got it down to 5 milliseconds. So that was definitely
useful.
Totally. So that was great. And then, so we did that with Apple. And then they asked us, because at that point, around that time, they bought eMagic.
Oh, right. That's right.
Right?
Yeah,
Remember that?
That was a crazy transition.
Yeah. And that was also at the same time when DigiDesign decided that they wanted the whole converter market themselves. So they were kind of Xing us out. Yeah. And so I was looking for a new partner. And we were doing some stuff with Steinberg, which was great. But there were so many... Steinberg was a more PC-oriented company. Right. And we were so... the problem was with PCs at that time, first of all, there wasn't a driver that was, but also... people tended to make their own PC. And so there were so many support calls, and it was mainly people building their own computer and not getting it right. And then they end up calling our support line because of the fact that we had actually real people answering the phone. And so that was not great. So we went, wow, this is just too much. So then Apple came along. They bought eMagic, which had Logic, and they asked us if we would consider making a converter that would work with their products, with making. Sure. So that was great. So they had a price point in mind, and I said, well, look, we can't. I sent them an inbox. I said, well, why would you want me to make anything? You could just have this.
Use this, yeah.
Because we can't hit that price point.
Right.
There's no way. Right. And so they relented, and we made Duet.
Right.
So, and Duet was by far one of our most popular and still is products.
Yeah,
so,
well, it hit across a much broader market than just the high end, and you still got the high end sound.
Yeah, well, that was it. And it was a tough sell at Apogee because the engineers there just didn't want to go down market. They were used to being at the 88,000 and the digital multi-track level, and then all of a sudden I'm asking them to do something for around $500. They were like, no way. Right. But, I could see that the market was shifting pretty rapidly, sure. A&R guys were now giving small budgets to artists. Mm-hmm. So they were giving them a budget to buy like an ADAT machine and an interface and things like that.
Yeah.
And that was a recording package until they got into the studio. So I thought, oh, this is a good thing for us, and it certainly was. And finally, we convinced them that it would be a good thing to design it, since I really wanted it.
Yeah, a little influence within the company, I suppose.
Yeah. It takes a little while because, I understood, but I could also see that the really high end and the high end studios were becoming more limited, and
Sure.
so it was tough because with disk-based systems and a really great interface, and a lot of people were starting to work at home.
Yeah, of course.
So.
I still have my mini DAC.
Oh, you do?
And I don't have my mini me anymore, but I've still got my mini DAC. I still use it. It's what I carry. It's it's kind of silly, but of course it has everything you'd ever want in terms of I/O,
Right.
for playback and for testing
Yeah.
speakers. When did that series come out? I don't remember the year, but I've had that thing since they came out.
Well, it wasn't long after the 81,000. Well, it was at the same time because there was a 3-rack unit, so it was the 81,000, DA1000, and the power supply that went into a 19-inch rack.
Right.
So it was around the same time,
Wow.
and that was that's a beauty. I still have ours too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it runs.
Works great. Just don't plug in a wrong power supply with a reverse polarity. I found
Yeah,
out the hard
that's
way.
not good.
That is not a good thing. It's
No.
$180 by my local tech to fix that. So it stays with me. It's actually over there.
I see it.
Obviously, you have to be a little crazy to start off with what either of us did.
Right.
But the trick is always progressing, to always have change, whether it's every year or every 5 years. You have to constantly reinvent yourself. How do you do that? I mean, how did you, like 3 or 4 years into a product cycle, you're already having to think, what am I doing 2 years from now or beyond? How do you do that?
Well, there's a couple of things that I love technology.
Right.
This is one thing. So I'm always I'm not an engineer, but I just love it anyway, and I'm always reading about it and watching YouTube videos and podcasts, and so it interests me, and I hang out most times with engineers, not just recording engineers, but I do a lot of that too, because of course Bob, is my husband, so there's a fair few of those guys floating around. But what happens is they love to complain. Especially my husband, he complains a lot. And some of the things are ridiculous, but some of them are really, there's a reason why he's complaining, because he's pushing the limits at what he does. And he's annoyed at something that's not working right, or why doesn't this interface with that, or wouldn't it be great if, so I tend to get a lot of ideas from him and his friends, because he's got some, really great friends that are also push the limits on what they're doing. But I think it's just seeing where the future is. Like, we got onto the Atmos thing, the immersive audio, really, really quickly, because I could see that was going to stick, because we had been through the 5.1 thing, and that didn't work out. So that was sad. But the amount that the record companies were pushing it, and the labels were pushing it. And Dolby was pushing it hard. But more than that, we found out that they were giving preferential playlists to the folks that had immersive mixes. So once you hear that, you go, wait a minute, this is going to stick around. So we got into immersive audio really rapidly, and that's worked out for us. And so we did the Symphony, and now we have the Symphony Studio, which has brought it down to a more attractive price point, more manageable for a lot of other people. So staying ahead of the game is just keeping your ear to the ground, and also not getting stuck in the past. You can't, things are going to change, and you can't put your foot down and say, I'm not changing. Like, AI is something that we're looking at too. I think that people have to, because it's like the genie. You can't put it back in the bottle. It's here. So I'm hoping that there's ways to use AI that allow people to create more simply, but not use it to create. So it's used as a tool.
Yeah.
So,
not a crutch.
Yeah. So we're looking around at stuff, and got a few
That's
things.
exciting. That's a tough long-term line to look because we're at the beginning of the ramp and it's already accelerating
So
exponentially.
fast. I mean, if you're not on top of it every day, you've missed something.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
know.
Well, you mentioned, Bob and engineers in general complaining. I think, from my perspective, it's how I handle a lot of our business too. You're identifying opportunities,
Right.
right?
I'm going to use that now.
Yeah, you should, because especially at home, like it'll go better. You can ask my wife, because I complain, and then there are opportunities. But yeah, that's truly what it's about. It may come out a different way, but they are identifying what we should be looking at for solutions for them. Whether
Right.
it's our end users looking for a complete, 58 widgets that all work together to make one incredible thing, or a single solution that solves many problems.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
What we need to be careful about at Apogee, because we have so many engineers that are actually recording engineers as well, is they tend to make things complicate. They want to. I'm there, always there. So if you can't go down, so this is what I've learned from Apple. You shouldn't really have to have a manual. I mean, it's easy for them to say because they're in a consumer business. So I take that with a grain of salt. But making products that are intuitive, that aren't that difficult, and then be really careful you don't over-design them, because it's a widget. Does it need to do all those things, or does it have one purpose and just do it really well? So there's always that balancing act, because everybody likes to try to add something.
Of course, yeah. Of course, there's always a little bit more we could push this, and is it reasonable to make it a product? Well, the immersive thing, so besides being a manufacturer, you've clearly become a developer since a long time ago.
Yeah.
And one of the striking things when we finally did get a Symphony Studio in hand, we plugged it in, connected to the system in this room, brought up the interface, the software interface, and looked at it and like, truly surprised, because we've used the Symphony 2 interface and panel, and it certainly gets the job done, but it was not conducive to an immersive solution.
Right.
With the software in the Symphony Studio was just, we did not need the manual.
Oh, good.
It was really,
That's
we
great.
sat down about a half hour into it, like, okay, we can actually tune the room the way we want to tune it with enough, let's say, finesse or resolution to be able to accommodate how carefully we want to tune a room, not just sort of broadly make less bass or more mid. No, we want really, really refined capabilities. And it was all in that software. How did you guys do that? I mean, it must have been partly a new team, at least.
It was. It is. And we just, we had been doing it then. By the time the Symphony Studio came around, it was our 4th year into immersive. So we got a chance to really speak to a lot of people. We've been going around the world doing these immersive workshops, where Bob is like the one we're having here tonight, so we've done them in London and Berlin and Tokyo and, Nashville, all over the place. So we're collecting a lot of data in the fact of just talking to people and look, what is it that you want? What will make it easier for you? And then, of course, you look at what else is out there. So we had that opportunity, because of just the research that we'd done. So, and then our, main engineer is also a recording engineer, and he was into immersive. So he wanted to make sure that it was something simple enough to use. So we're really pleased with it because it has gone over really well. So
that's great.
We're really happy about it.
You and I have had a little discussion about this thing. You've created a multi-channel converter for the masses, but I still think you're underrating what it sounds like. We listened to it on, a $300,000 speaker system compared to every converter that you can buy. And it is definitely not an entry-level experience when you hear the analog conversion.
Oh, no,
box.
It's not. It's symphony
incredible.
Quality.
Yeah,
right.
It's amazing.
It's symphony quality. We just didn't put all the bells and whistles on there as we did with Symphony Mark II. But it's great quality. And obviously every design that we do, we learn something from the previous design. So we're always trying to improve and in the beginning and still, listening to components. I mean, if people can believe it, we did that and then doing resistor ladders and things like that. It's pretty crazy what goes into one of our products. Not that there's a resistor ladder in Symphony, but those are the lengths that we go to before we design something, just to make sure we get the best parts.
Yeah. Well, there was a lesson I learned from Doug Sachs years and years ago. I was still working at DigiDesign before I started this, and he wanted to hear Pro Tools because it doesn't sound that great, but I want to hear it. Okay, we're using it. Russ, can you bring over a Micropolis hard drive and a Barracuda hard drive? I want to listen to them both. And of course, I'm just like, here we go.
Yeah.
He's our customer.
Right.
We're going to listen to it. And in a blind test, 10 times out of 10, he could always pick that the Micropolis sounded better. Still the most amazing, eye-opening event for me is like, okay, there's more to hear than normal people can hear.
Right.
Because 10 out of 10 in a blind test on which hard drive plays better. Like, what is that?
Yeah. But it's true. Yeah. And then when you start adding all those things up, it makes a difference.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe only Doug would hear it at that level, but if, it was the cable and this and that and the other thing in the room acoustics 100%. And whatever, it makes a difference. So, I mean, he was an incredible mastering engineer. So.
Yeah, very particular, which is what it takes, when we put these rooms together, and it's a little off topic from what you and I were talking about, but it's all the small little details that make it sound amazingly different and better. Well, it's not like, I've got these speakers, now it's going to be great, or I have this wire, or these amps, or that interface. It's every single thing.
Doug was great. We worked on, he let us come over many, many times and did listening tests with him. He had a lot of feedback for us. So I was just going through some old paperwork about a month ago, just cleaning out a cabinet or something, and I saw his name on a number of things. Oh, wow, that's right. He was involved with that, and then he was involved with that.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
The last thing I had thought to talk to you about was what's next for Apogee. And I know it's kind of a trick question because you can't really tell me until it's baked, I guess. But
right.
Can you say in broad terms of like what's next for Apogee?
We're looking at the high-end market. We're looking at what is there and what isn't there, and because it would be a 2 to 3 year development phase or something like that. And in between, we bring out other products. But there's one in particular that we see a real need for, and it's not going to be a consumer selling product, but it will be something that, audio video guys will find very handy. Cool. But it's going to take a lot of engineering. And I think that's what differentiates us. And there's only a few companies that are willing to spend 3 years in development. They want quick returns, right? Yeah. They want something that's out within 9 months or something, and they refresh their lines really rapidly. We tend to build things, and they're good for years and years and years. So this one, I like it, and so this is why I'm on board to fund it.
It's the ultimate decision, isn't it?
It
Are
is.
we going to put money into this?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go for it. Something you and I have talked about over the years, just here and there scattering. We talk about some of the charity work that you do, not just personally, but that you've been involved with or advised on. Is there anything that you're working on right now specifically that's sort of close to your heart?
You know what? We have several charities that we donate to and that we're involved with, and I've done a lot of work this past year, or we have, with schools, and we're looking at the the schools that really need some funding and some help, and so we've donated $250,000 worth of product to schools around, and actually Apple's helped us with it because they have a whole arm of folks that know where to go with equipment that will get the best use.
Where's
and
the need?
The best, where the real need is. Because I'll tell you what, you decide to give stuff away, it's almost as much work as it is to sell something. Actually, in some ways it's more work, especially when you're giving away that amount of product, because we were getting people started with jams and mics and booms and things like that. So that's been a big initiative over the last year, is to go into the schools that really need some support, and especially if some music funding gets pulled, right? And then we, being a woman, I'm always interested in seeing more women in the industry, and they need support. So Emily Lazar has a great organization.
Yeah.
And I love Emily. She's so great. So we're supporting that organization and, Beats by Girls and things like that, just to try and let women know that there's something other than fashion and, something else that they should be thinking about that's interesting, and especially if they enjoy music and they like playing or making music. And then we do a lot for the environments. We're heavily involved with UCLA's Environmental Institute. Actually, our daughter's on the board of directors there, so that's a big cause for us because, what's the fires and the floods, and we need to get it together here quickly.
Yeah, we've got a deadline.
Yeah, we do.
We'd like to move on now.
Yeah,
so now would be good.
We definitely do. So those are all. And then there's the orphanage that we do that we've been supporting for the last 20 years. There's an orphanage just across the border in Mexico. So we found Corazon de Vida, which is just across the border. And boy, that was an eye-opener. When we went there, they didn't have running water and it was this nun running this orphanage, and it's all donation-based. There's no funding from the Mexican government, right? And people just kind of find out that you're taking care of kids and babies, and they just drop their children off. And, there's usually drugs involved or whatever. So, but I remember going down there and cleaning the kitchen, and it was like, I felt like I was using rags that somebody had changed their oil with. And they had the refrigerator locked with a chain lock so that the kids wouldn't get into it in between meals. I mean, it was crazy. So anyways, we've been supporting them for a long time, and now things are so much better there, and their kids are going to college, and they're coming back, and they're now helping the others. So it's a real cycle. So it's a good cycle. So I feel really good about that.
That's incredible.
Yeah, we're happy about that one.
Amazing.